have some really big things which will have to be done, and that creates a huge potential for innovation going forward. How to do that? Of course, I think you need to encourage experimentation there as well. You need to allow ideas to come up. You need to allow ideas to emerge, because if you basically say, well, this is the solution already, then you will kill that innovation from the outset. So you really need to do that, I think very cleverly. So focusing on outcomes is really the key here. Moving also, and that is a difficulty in many countries, moving beyond the focus on just the lowest cost as the way of procuring, to think a little bit about the long-term effects, thinking about the social returns and so on, can really make things happen. So I think in all of that, of course, information technology is one of the key enablers which can make a lot of these things happen as a platform. Let me end by actually sort of supporting what Kirsten Baum was saying a second ago. I think we still need to improve our evidence and for many policies. It's very weak. We're doing some work together with the World Bank at the moment. Also, we're linking to Nesta on trying to really improve the evidence and looking what we can actually get from different countries on what works. And if you look very carefully, it's pretty poor. And I think we need to do a lot better in that. But also, we need to have much more of this experimentation, learning from experimentation. And I think one of the dimensions of that is also what's happening at local level. I mean, there's a lot happening at governmental or at regional levels, which is very interesting and very important to look at and to try and learn from those experiences. So to do more of that and to really build a community of practitioners around some of those issues, I think would be a really good thing also coming out of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk, and let me just make my remarks in this session, in this round. I think many of the aspects are really about how do we, catalyze innovation through action of governments or other bodies. So I'll briefly tell you about what we're doing and how we hope to catalyze innovation. I mean, our project is to give a unique ID to 1 billion people. But when we designed it, I think we are designing it from the point of view of creating an innovation system around it. And we looked at 2 examples of that. One is the internet and one is the global positioning system. In both cases, the origins of these 2 systems were in government expenditure. In the case of the internet, it was because of the investment in ARPANET and TCP/IP and all that. And that finally led to the World Wide Web and the browser, which led to the internet economy, which today is a $1 trillion economy. And now, of course, a substantial part of that economy is in the private sector, but it began on a foundation laid by government investment in technology. The same thing is true of the GPS, which again came out of Star Wars and all that, and came out with a global positioning system, which was launched, which was released to the civilian environment about 12 years back in 2000. And today we have a huge economy on location-based services, whether it's inertial navigation system, maps, or all kinds of location-based services that have emerged. So in both examples, one could argue that an initial public investment in infrastructure then laid the platform for substantial private and other innovations. So when we designed the UID system or the Aadhaar system for giving IDs, we said that we shouldn't really limit this ID system just to a few specific applications that we know, but design it in an open platform which allows innovations to be built on this by anybody. So we actually built it as an innovation platform which allows public and private entities and innovators to build apps which require ID verification. So think of it as a real ID infrastructure on which, so we have created an ecosystem surrounding a basic platform with people who sign on with us and become what we call as authentication user agencies, and then use this platform and embed ID verification in whatever application that they're doing. And ID verification or real ID verification is very critical to every service. So whether you want to verify a person before letting him take money from his bank account, or whether you want to verify a person before releasing his electronic health record, or when you want to verify a person before giving them a passport or whatever, all of them involve ID verification as the first step. And we provide this ID verification as an online service on the cloud with open programming interfaces which allow different users to embed that in their applications. And we are now encouraging companies to build more and more apps which use this service. So I think just to say that, I think certainly when we think of building government infrastructure, I think we must think about it from day one to build it in a way that it has this openness about it, which allows different stakeholders to build applications on top of that. So that's been the broad strategy that we are following. So with that, I think we have come to the end of the discussions of this round. I think we have time for a few questions of the panelists. Are there any questions from anyone? Yeah, Samir?
A very good question, and as you can imagine, quite often it feels quite messy. But we feel there's an advantage in working across those boundaries, from learning, for example, drawing on our experiences with commercial venture capital to apply those best practices into social venture capital. Another way, which is the only way we can work, is that everything we do is in partnership. So I mentioned some of the ways we were working with different organizations around the table. We try and leverage at least 50% on our endowment in terms of where we work, whether that's working on research or working as investors. So we try and work with experts across the field and leverage experience throughout the system. So in lots of ways, we're a platform for innovation in the UK. Also, another thing is we're not a delivery agency. So we would never aim to get involved in something long term. Our role is really to be the spur and the catalyst early on, and then to work with the rest of the innovation support infrastructure in the UK. For example, our Technology Strategy Board, which is our equivalent of the Technology Development Board, to take on what works. Does that give you an idea of how we work? Happy to talk further as well.
Yeah, you're...
Can you hear me? Yeah. Again to you, the question. We were talking about facilitating innovation. I also live in the UK partly, and I find that, because policymakers protect certain bastions, for instance, in health, some time ago there was a policy that was banning alternative medicine in the European Union. I've also dealt with the MEd and MTeach programs in universities. And I find that they're very fixed about the way you write an assignment or the way you use the Harvard system of referencing. I'm just giving you some examples. So when one is so fixed in how you express yourself or how you use medicinal systems or wellness systems, how would your agency help in breaking those bastions and creating alternative avenues for expression?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, even within our National Health Service, which is in theory a unified agency and a brilliant opportunity for innovation at scale, there are 100 different organizations working to spur innovation in different ways. How we would try to spur those kind of collaborations and break down those barriers would be to provide a neutral space for discussion, to provide a neutrally analysed set of evidence of what works in different contexts, and to try and draw on examples from the rest of the UK and around the world to, I suppose, stimulate a new type of thinking. But a lot of our work, again, is about connecting, for example, our health system to our Technology Strategy Board through working with the SBRI programme, for example, which is our equivalent of the SBIR. So that's broadly the way.
Thank you. You had a question?
Yes, I had a question. Again to Kristen.
My God.
Again, we're looking at evidence. I mean, one of the ways you can attract the investors and the rest of them is to justify why you're looking at innovation now. So it's quicker, faster, better, more sustainable, whatever, right? The magnitudinal increase we're looking at. And we're finding evidence on the ground to be extremely poor, to justify this. Is there a platform that's coming up of, you mentioned 200 entities, I think, in the UK who was actually looking at this evidence. What's out there that's actually looking at evidence from what we're achieving through these innovative processes?
Well, I think that's a great question. As Dirk mentioned, the OECD are doing some great work in drawing together evidence from around the world on the Innovation Policy Platform, which I encourage you to take a look at. The European Union is also undertaking efforts in, I suppose, librarianship of evidence. But just the fact that it exists doesn't mean it's usable. So that's one of the reasons we set up the Alliance for Useful Evidence, is to make sure that the evidence that does exist can be applied by the organizations that need it most.
Thank you. I have two questions for Mr. Fjallström. I hope I pronounce your name well. The first question is, you told about the Energy Agency, which comprises the whole innovation chain. Do you have in your country other agencies like this, I mean in other policy areas, or is the Energy Agency the only example in comprising the whole innovation chain? And my second question is, you told something about the Indo-Swedish innovation platform. Has it been, it sounds very interesting, has it been established recently? And maybe you can say something about your experience so far.
Okay. As far as I know, we are the only agency in Sweden that work on the whole sort of say sector, the energy sector, and also the innovation for the whole innovation system. So, but we have a special agency for innovation. But we work in both the energy sector and the innovation sector, and the whole thing. And you asked about the innovation platform, Indo-Swedish innovation platform, and actually this is established today. Is so, but we have working with it for about 6 months now, and try to figure out how to work, and. Have been a lot of meetings on Skype with the Indian part, CII, and also now we have, this week we bring some companies here to India and meet Indian companies. And the experience is that there's a lot of talk about economy, and there's a lot of talk about how to find new business models for entering the Indian market. Yeah.
Thank you. You had a question, sir?
Yeah. So I'm going to address it to the OECD representative, but I think the whole panel could address this. We talk so much about the differences in India, the way we have the Google representative talk about the differences in terms of how we interact with media and our reading levels of the people. And Gopi, you talked about GE came out with certain products, but we were too early for them, and so we've learned from that, and we're doing localization. I wonder, OECD is a place where I, as a IP policy advocate, look to find standardized practices, and this panel is about good global practices. But I wonder if at some point there needs to be a recognition, and if we could do that, that because India is so different in all these other aspects, some of these global paradigms just don't work here. Whether it be, and I could say the patent system, or I could say, ways in which wealth is distributed or power is distributed. So then, at some point, does India with its 1.2 billion just say, you know what, we've got a whole different thing going on here, and so some of these things we're not going to do globally, or do we always have to harmonize, learn from the global, can we unlearn from them and do it our own way? And I'd be especially interested in what the OECD thinks.
Well, fortunately, we're not the responsible body for IP practices, but I think you'll have to Sasha, I'm not sure if he's here. Sasha Winsen from the WIPO would probably be better placed to talk about that.
Just an example.
But I think you're asking a very, very important question, and a very relevant one. I mean, I think we are working on a number of what we call, well, sort of good practices in certain areas. And in some areas, I think perhaps, yes, you can probably get agreement on something which is universally acceptable to everyone. But I think in many cases, and particularly when you're talking about things like innovation, which are so context-specific, then you can probably talk about good practices in a certain context, but I'm very happy that this session was not called best practices, because I don't think they exist. I mean, I think you always have to look very carefully at the specific context. I think there's a broader question which is a bit implicit in what you're asking is, well, do we need them in certain areas? Do we sort of need to have these, and will we continue to have them? Well, hopefully, I think in some areas probably we do need them, because I think you need to have a bit of a common understanding on certain things, and there are certain areas where, for instance, on trade and so on, where it is very helpful if you do have a universally agreed set of rules which basically everybody can sign up to. The question is whether everybody can sign up to some of the rules which exist at the moment. I think that is a good question. That is a broader question. But I think you do need them in certain areas, but you need them in every area. That I don't think so. I mean, I think everybody should be, and that's also the issue of experimentation. I mean, you probably need to go your own way in certain things.
If I can add, I do agree with Dirk. It's not possible that in all areas will be exactly the same globally, but we are based on the common law, and many of the things are still common. Our law works very well. It's the speed which is probably an issue. Even intellectual property law, finally when the ruling is there, it's the right ruling. But there are areas, for example, there is a lot of weightage given to what I would say the word. So there is a lot of weightage given to, I give you my word for, I mean, not in the exact same language. So doing things like memorandums of understandings and things like that might not be as necessary here. You work on a certain agreement, but when it comes to intellectual property, protecting it, you have to do it the same way that you would do it anywhere else globally.
I think we have time for one last question, if there's anyone. Peter?
So this is a question for anyone. I think innovators conflate two different ideas. One, commercial viability, which is market-based, and the other, sustainability, which can be government subsidized. And there's a sort of sense that the latter is really the only solution for the very, very poor, who just have simply no money to create a market. And I'm wondering where policy fits in ensuring that in these discussions, the very, very poor don't get left out.
Yeah, let me take a first crack at it. And the way I look at it is you need to be inclusive in your innovation. For example, if there are villages which are off the grid, you need to be able to get electricity to them. It is not as much as poverty as getting the progress of science and technology to them is the way I would look at it. And in order to do that, there is a policy framework which is required, because there is a cost of electricity. There is a business model which is not yet set as to how to follow the dollar, who pays for the electricity, and how does the money flow. All those things require policy intervention. So I think that is one way to look at it. You cannot create a market where there is none, and hence, from a pure standpoint of innovation is finding new ways of creating value. There is more than commercial success as value. So to your point, if it is something where there is no profit involved, that is not a place where business with a P&L kind of a model would come and play. But there are places like the one I described, where you can get electricity to remote villages which can still afford the electricity, where policy can play a role in getting the businesses there.
Thanks, Gopi. And I think I'm sorry, there are questions, but we need to bring this panel to an end. I think we had a very good discussion. Just a few insights which at least struck me was, one is that there's no cookie cutter model to promoting innovation, and I think innovation is very contextual. It depends on what are the problems. The problems of a sparsely populated developed country will be very different from the problems of a highly populated tropical country. So I guess every solution has a context, and I think we have to grapple with the issues of creating business models or other sustainable models for doing this right. I also noticed quite a bit of focus on how we can use public spending and public procurement to drive innovation in various areas, and so on. So I think there's a lot we discussed today. But I think we need to now wrap up this session. Now we will be breaking for tea or coffee, and soon after that, the next session will be it's called Towards an Innovation Ecosystem. It's chaired by Mr. Arun Maira, who's a distinguished member of the Planning Commission, is also a member of the National Innovation Council, and who's a person after many decades in the private sector joined as a member of the Planning Commission a few years back. So I'm sure he brings a very interesting perspective. So thank you, and we'll break for tea.
Out. In any case, the audience isn't large enough for the impact that these thoughts will have, and we're going to be recording these and disseminating these further. So I would suggest that without much further ado, and people will keep joining in, we'll kick off the discussion. I'm going to save some time by not giving long nor very formal introductions to the panel. They've been here before. And just by name, you can see the 6 of them here. Dr. Mashelkar to my left, then Mr. Robert Santamaza, to his left, and further Mr. Robert Pepper further to the left, and to my right, Mr. Muhi Masjoob and Amrinder Sinha, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, Government of India. The subject that we have is Towards an Innovation Ecosystem. So I have proposed to the panel that we would focus on an ecosystem, a large national ecosystem. And the question that we have is, what are the key components of a national innovation ecosystem? And how does one, as a policymaker, induce those components to grow and connect with other components in the innovation ecosystem? What the panel has agreed to do is to take less than 6 minutes in the first round, in which they will pick on 1 or 2 essential components of a national innovation ecosystem and say, why that's important. And if they can, which would be nice, to say, well, what are the key things that a policymaker would do to enable that component of the innovation ecosystem to become stronger. And having done the first round, which should take less than 30 minutes after I stop, because there are 5 panelists here, we'll go into the next round of discussion, which may be within the panel, and also I'll keep open to inviting questions or suggestions from those who are here. And we have to stop at 5:45, but 5:50 maybe, which is 60 minutes. Mr. Pepper, we make it 5:45, 5:50. And Ramesh, you said you'll get nervous after 6, but I'll make it 5:15. You can stay there. You'll be nervous after 5:45. So, okay, 5:45. We'll do that. So I'm going to be very brief. We're talking about a national innovation ecosystem. We had the opportunity this morning to listen to people from some 10 countries, and of course the United Nations she was talking about in all the countries. So, and the people from the various countries were talking about their national innovation ecosystem, actually, and how it situates with the global trade and global ecosystems. And so it was very good to get the mind thinking about national innovation ecosystems. And as I was thinking about that, I was coming to recognize that there was a big trade-off that is being named between the efficiency required in any system to get things done without waste and get them done quickly, and then certain processes and structures are good for that. And the other side is having new ideas, new experiments, and then what are the structures and processes required for that. And it is always true that those structures that are very good at getting things done, the set things, known things done efficiently without waste, are the structures that kill the possibilities of new ideas generated in the ecosystem. At the same time, you can't just keep generating new ideas in the ecosystem. You need to very quickly start adopting the processes to convert those ideas efficiently into affordable, accessible results for people. So the national innovation ecosystem needs to have both in place. We're not talking about pure research and ideas. We're talking about the results of those ideas, which would require efficient delivery systems also. And both these two types of systems must coexist within the national ecosystem at the national level. The same tension does apply within particular organizations, and all persons who worked within large business organizations, and we have some here, experience this, that your R&D results don't get converted very effectively into saleable, effectively produced and sold products. And sometimes your competitors do a better job of that, though they're not more innovative than you are. And so they create more value at the end of it. So how do you, in a large company, ensure that you got sufficient innovation, at the same time sufficient efficiency to get the benefit of the ideas? And so you can imagine the problem becomes even more complex when you talk about a large national ecosystem. So having said that, I'm just going to now request my co-panelists here, the panelists here, to begin speaking for 6 minutes and less. Dr. Mashelkar on my left was describing an experience recently at Harvard, was it, or MIT? At Harvard, where 26 persons spoke for 6 minutes each at a very high-powered panel that he was a member of. They happened to have chosen 6 minutes also, and he said the chairman of the panel was absolutely brutal. At the end of 6 minutes, you'll be picked up and taken off, right? And so, I'm not a very brutal guy, so you'll please help me to make it easy for me. At about 5 minutes, I'll start getting nervous, and I'll express my nervousness, and you must stop at 6 minutes. Thank you. I'm going to start with Dr. Mashelkar.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll begin by reminding you that if you look at the innovation dictionary today, you suddenly find new vocabulary. One of that is inclusive innovation, frugal innovation, reverse innovation, Gandhian innovation, even nanovation, by the way. An American couple, Freebergs, have written a book on nanovation inspired by the car Nano. Okay? These words did not exist 5 years ago. And suddenly, why is there such an interest in this subject? I'm going to focus my 6 minutes on inclusive innovation ecosystem that we need to create. I think the first most important thing is that we normally feel that technological advances bring greater differences between the haves and the have-nots. More from more is what we have been doing, right? And less for less for the have-nots. But the paradigm shift now in inclusive innovation is more from less. And that's a very fundamental shift because that brings the society together. Those of you who are interested might want to look at a Harvard Business Review paper that C.K. Prahlad and I co-authored, that was C.K.'s last paper, called Innovation's Holy Grail in Harvard Business Review, July, August 2010. And that describes this paradigm shift, by the way, and how it actually happened. Now, here is an interesting paradigm shift. What we are talking about is really access equality despite income inequality. It's incredible. I was looking at The Economist, one of the latest issues, where there are 24 pages on income inequality in different countries and what do we do about it, and not one word about access equality. I'm surprised, excepting a line by Roosevelt which says we must provide equal opportunity, and then you have to guess what you need to do. And I think that is fundamental. How do you create access equality despite income inequality, and what is the ecosystem which can create that? Now, there, the first important point is that can we actually make it? And the answer is yes, we can. I mean, I was going from Bombay to Pune the other day. I stopped at the traffic light and saw two people wanting to cross the street. One was a new rich lady, and the other one was a slum girl, maybe 6 or 7. Huge income inequality, but access equality. Both of them were on their mobiles. Why? Inclusive innovation. First, technological, which was done by the Nokias and Ericssons of this world, $25 handset, but would have been of no use if the phone calls were 10 cents per minute, right? She couldn't afford it. It became a fraction of a cent because of business process innovation that was done by Indian enterprises, like starting with Reliance, Airtel taking it forward, and so on and so forth. It was a combination. So I think you can have access equality despite income equality, and if you can create the same access equality in education, in health, in financial services, then you can make a difference. Chairman, what I've done is that there was a big discussion on this everywhere, and people talked about what is inclusive innovation. There was a lot of confusion. So I have written down a definition, which I'm using in my forthcoming book on inclusive innovation. HarperCollins is going to bring it out hopefully in 3 to 4 months. It is this, that any type of innovation that provides an affordable access of quality goods and services in a sustainable way at a significant scale, especially at the base of the economic pyramid. And each of these words are important. Any type, technological innovation, business process innovation, workflow innovation, system delivery innovation, or a combination thereof, okay, not just one. Second, affordable access. And here it turns out that if you are really serious about the base of the pyramid, about whom we have been talking about, then it has to be not affordable, extraordinarily affordable, right? You can't have 40% reduction, you have to have 40-fold reduction. You can't have 10% reduction, you have to have 10-fold reduction. That means not incremental innovation, but disruptive innovation. And in the morning, Sam referred to the surgeries, heart surgery, which are 30 times less, an artificial foot, which is 100 times less, hepatitis B vaccine, which is 40 times less, eye surgery, which are 100 times less, and yet you have, let's say, the same high quality, okay? So it is getting more from less, not less from less. What is the ecosystem that we require in order to sort of create that? And I believe, Chairman, that the government has a huge role to play here, basically, okay? It can be direct, it can be indirect. Like direct one, like the grand challenges that we talked about, like the New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative in India. Year 2000, I remember when as a DG CSR, we launched this program where we said, personal computer, not 80,000, but 10,000, right? From $2,000 to, let's say, $200. And it happened, Mobilis didn't take off. We had to, today you saw Akash, which was a tablet, which was for just $50, but that cannot move until public procurement comes in a big way, right? And therefore, government comes in, but government comes in with public procurement policies, tax breaks. We talked about the Inclusive Innovation Fund today of sort of $1 billion. The National Innovation Foundation, for example, the grassroots innovation, believing that we don't have just 1.3 billion mouths, but 1.3 billion minds. The government has taken those initiatives, I believe, is very important. And finally, there is a huge role for industry. Maybe during the discussion we can take it up, where they move from not just doing well and doing good, but doing well by doing good, making it as a social business. So the end line is really, the government is interested in inclusive growth. Everyone is, but for that, you have to have inclusive business delivering those solutions, and for that, you require inclusive innovation and an inclusive innovation ecosystem that can make it happen.
Thank you very much, and bang on 6 minutes. Thank you so much. I'm not going to pick up the points now. I'm just going to keep on going. And to yourself, I'm going to turn to my right now, Mr. Muhi Masjoub. Again, the question is, what are key features of a national innovation ecosystem, and the one that you want to propose that we pay attention to here, and how does one create it?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. I will speak from the Canadian perspective here. In my opinion, first, before you look at what you need to do in your innovation ecosystem, you look at what are the challenges. There are two challenges today in Canada that we are faced with. The first one is the R&D investment have decreased in the past 10, 15 years. And the second one is a lower productivity. What is needed, and if you look at the causes of why those challenges are there, is we don't have the competition that our neighbors in the US are enjoying. Competition, in my opinion, is key to drive innovation. And with driving higher innovation, you automatically drive higher productivity in the industries that you're innovating in. If you look at the areas that are key to create a system that are more innovative, there are areas of support and I agree with Dr. Michalker, who stated that government funding is key. I believe government have to start with funding and priming the pump for innovation. The second area you look at, I believe the education system is key. I truly believe education in any country is key to starting and priming the innovation pump and to help the citizen from the bottom of the pyramid to start building a better future for themselves. The third area that is very important is skilled investors that understand the industries that these innovations are going to prosper in, so they can help it, so they can support it. And the last area is you need to have large markets that these innovations can then play in. And most important, the country need to have good international trading laws to open up the market to larger areas. There is a second side of the coin in this area, and that is to ensure that innovation is healthy, you need to have pressures. And I'll highlight a couple of pressures that I believe are key. The first one is you need to have aggressive competition, because again, competition will drive your innovation up and will force you to think out of the box in how you innovate in different areas. You need to have a sophisticated consumer that will always challenge you to innovate better in the field you're operating in. And the third area, your investors need to demand some sort of profitability growth to ensure that you focus on the right areas in your innovation. Thank you
very much. Thank you. Thank you. And again, I'm going to just carry on and take comments from the other panelists. I'm going to move right, but I know you might get anxious. Mr. Robert Pepper. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you very much. I actually have some, try to be very pragmatic about and use some work that we've done. I have a couple of slides that I think will illustrate this. You can go next one. I'm going to skip a bunch. On this one, by the way, just to reiterate, reflects a point, no, next one, about the bottom of the pyramid. What you can see here, this is about internet adoption globally, and the adoption rates for the developed economies, the advanced economies, is flattened. All of the growth coming now is in emerging economies, and but we still have to connect 4 billion more people to the internet. All right, this is an imperative. It is a goal. The UN Broadband Commission has laid this out as a goal. Next. Next, please. Going to some of the points that were already made, but again, putting it in a context of just some evidence. 40% of the U.S. GDP comes from companies that did not exist 30 years ago. Nearly all new job growth in the last 5 years was created by companies that were less than 5 years old. So this is the impact of innovation on the economy. Next, please. There's a very high correlation between national competitiveness and ICT readiness. This is highly correlated. So the question I want to ask is, what is the, next please, ecosystem for the ICT investment that's needed that drives the innovation? This is one sector, innovation, information communications technologies. This is work that we published in the Global Information Technology Report published by the World Economic Forum. We first did this in 2008, and we have updated it each year since then. And very concretely, we look at an ecosystem on the x-axis and the ICT investment on the y. The data come from standard sources, UN, World Bank, World Economic Forum, ITU, etc. And I'll come back to some of these components because these are the components for the ecosystem. Competition is key. Market dynamics, business climate, how difficult or easy it is to do a business, etc. Next, please. And what we've done is we've taken that and we've mapped 110 countries on their ecosystem and their ICT investment. And of course, it's very difficult to have causality, but it's very highly correlated that if you have best practices in your ecosystem, you have a much higher investment on the extent of your ICT infrastructure. Next. And one of the implications is that if you're in the lower left, you have high prices for broadband and low adoption rates. If you're in the upper right, you have low prices and high adoption. This is not, you know, anything more than 101 economics. Next, where's India? That's where India is on our ICT map, right? It's lower third, it's the upper part of the lower third. And so there's a lot of things that can be done for improvement on the ecosystem here to drive investment in ICT, including resulting in broadband. Next, this is India compared to its regional neighbors. Next, this is India compared to countries with similar GDP per capitas. But, you know, India should not be comparing itself with Ghana and Nigeria. It really should be looking at next the aspirational countries, right? These tend to be small countries. They tend to be Northern European, not entirely, but you know, Sweden is up there in the upper right, and then Singapore is a city-state. Next, comparing India to the G20. And what you can see in terms of the largest countries, right, the 4 largest population countries, China, India, the US, and Indonesia, most of the large population countries are clustered with India. India, Indonesia, and China, large, very large populations, still emerging economies. Next. So there's some good news here, though, in India when it comes to, we have another study that we do annually. It's a rolling 5-year forecast of broadband adoption. Globally, we look at different countries. So there's some really good news. Between the forecast for 2015 and the forecast for 2016, there was a huge leap, because what we could not foresee was that the forecast increase in internet users in India was 10% per year. What we found from 2010 to 2011, it was actually 30% increase. Something good is happening, right? And I think that you know, the question is, how do we leverage that? Next, please. The latest chapter we're having coming out in next year's Global Information Technology Report is a typology of national broadband plans. And we've looked at, there are 119, we've looked at a subset, and what we've come up with is a typology that looks at both supply components and demand components, which creates the ecosystem for attracting investment in national broadband. And India is on the right track with the National Broadband Plan, the National Optical Network Fiber Plan, and if you look on the supply side, you know, again, we can come back to some of these, but the pieces are in place here now. If you look on the demand side, in fact, some of the applications, you know, inclusive innovation, we now have had we have a project that actually has remote medical examinations using this technology. We've already done 17,000 of these. We can have a medical examination for 50 rupees in rural areas. This is a game changer for bringing healthcare to the unserved across India. So bringing broadband to 250,000 gram panchaya and then to the villages is enormously important. Next, please. The final point is, well, the right pieces are in place, and India is, we believe, in this ecosystem is on the right path. There's some critical steps that need to be achieved here to actually bring it home, make it happen. On the supply side, it's future-proofing the investment, right, so that it's not just kind of one-off. It needs to actually be sustainable. And the technology, you don't want to have to make these huge CapEx investments more than once in a lifetime. And on the demand side, it's having sustainable business models, not just you know, good social responsibility. It actually is your point of doing well and doing good together, and one leveraging the other. Doing well by doing good, but that's the sustainable business model that we need. How do we embed the sustainable business model of a medical exam for 50 rupees and make that a sustainable business model that feeds revenue into an ICT ecosystem that supports the investment, that leads to radical innovation in things like how do you do remote healthcare? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I will try to be very, very tight to my 6 minutes, just remarking some basic concept on innovation ecosystem, starting from a first remark among this day. You probably followed all the sessions, and you had the possibility to get the presentation from several European countries. But more or less, each one of these countries talk about his own innovation strategy, being part of Europe and being together as 27 countries, more or less 450 million of people. That is less than 1/3 of the Indian population. So you can understand how the fragmentation, especially coming from Western Europe, is one remarkable point talking about innovation ecosystem. And curiously, unfortunately for people that is living in the Southern Europe, as you go down with latitude from Scandinavian countries, the innovation ecosystem conditions seems to degrade. And so we have very, very good experiences in Sweden, in Finland, in Norway, other countries. Then there are some complications going down to the Southern Europe. And these are basically coming by probably a less reactive environment. Just making reference to the European Commission and the model of innovation ecosystem that is defined by the European Commission as the triple helix model, I think that we have the basic concept describing a general ecosystem that are made by the research side, so the university, and the R&D institution, and anyone producing knowledge, education, and research, the business at the enterprise part that is approaching and going to the market, and the public sector that is basically regulating the ecosystem, defining policies, financing not profitable research, immediate profitable research. And so, in this sense, the triple helix model and the innovation ecosystem, in also the Horizon 2020 strategy, is very often defined as a digitally enabled ecosystem because of the pervasivity of ICT, and as you could see in the previous intervention, the ICT in general is really the key to innovation. Even more and more, many successful stories of innovation starts from an innovative business model, an innovative way to approach the market, not forgetting, for example, the dramatic shift we are having from the market, considering the role of the consumer in designing and defining new products and new services. And this is, again, enabled by the connectivity, the internet, the social network, the possibility to get immediate feedback. On the other hand, for example, if you remember the long tail theory, you can reach by the network such a vast span of consumers that you could never do in the previous past. So basically, these three components of the triple helix model must be now more reactive, more aligned to the global challenges that we are having. I would say that in this sense, since we are an innovation agency located in Italy, in the middle of an economy that is strongly characterized by very small companies, I would say much more small than the medium-sized companies, I would say that now we have been debating so much about the fact once being small was beautiful, now it's not beautiful anymore, now you have to be big, and so on. I think that nowadays this is something that also in this environment, in this ecosystem, the dimension of the company doesn't matter so much, but does matter really the dimension of the network that it has. That means the network, the global network in a open innovation view. That means not only a network for subcontracting, but basically to concentrate on core competencies, to trying to take other competencies, technologies where are best offered, or cutting-edge technologies, for example. On the other hand, being very responsive to the market. And this is possible only with ICT. Among the, just to finish with, I mean, the policymaker, the public sector, in this sense, must define common policies that are aligned to these new needs, must support education that is ready, that would be ready to respond to these new challenges, and to define, for example, very fast and quick, for example, fiscal tax deduction, fiscal policies in order to support also the birth of new companies, because in this sense, startups and new business models have the necessity to lean on these very quick and responsive instruments. And I would say for this first round, it's okay. Thank you.
Actually, it's a good transition because you emphasize the smallness and the small enterprises that you have a lot of in Italy and how they fit into an innovation ecosystem. And Amrinder here is Additional Secretary for Medium and Small Enterprises. So I'm just curious about your perspective of what are the key features of a national innovation ecosystem that enables the small enterprises to participate, innovate, and grow.
Good evening, friends. Thank you, Chairman. I will start by saying that in India, we are essentially at an individual level, culturally at an individual level, a very innovative people. We are the jugaad people. We try something or the other to get the job done. It becomes a problem when it comes to our collectivity. We are not prepared to share. Having said so, a good start has been made by the National Innovation Council. For the first time, we are talking to each other. Now, if this be so, take the global examples, take the German example, take the Swedish example. We all know that the first step, so far as technology innovation issues are concerned, would be that you bring your research institutions, your academia, your applied research institution, and your industry, all four of them on the same platform. Now, saying this is easy, but bringing them together, as our friends who have experienced it would realize, requires an enormous amount of patience and persuasion, particularly to the small industry and the medium industry, who are not willing to believe that that particular institution, that particular IIT, that particular CSIR laboratory will let us enter and even touch one of their products. We are very happy to note that with the very active support of Mr. Myra and other friends in the National Innovation Council, we have been able to bring Indian Institute of Science, several academic and applied institutions, as well as are now proceeding towards CSIR lab systems and tying it up till our last mile. So our role as a first take is to provide a platform. First provide a platform before you actively interfere. Now, there are four other institutional mechanisms which India is adopting or trying to adopt. First, which you must have heard since the morning, is the India Inclusive Innovation Fund. It is housed in our ministry. It has been created by National Innovation Council, and we are looking at inclusive innovation. By this year end, and I can see Saurabh here very vigorously saying yes, by this year end, it should be operational. Three quick schemes which I would draw your attention to, which we discovered to our surprise and pleasant surprise that it drives the innovation from the units. First was a design scheme. We invited our industrialists that in mass production, you will always have a problem. Why don't you engage designers, professional designers, design the same product in such a fashion that suddenly you have a better market? Initially, extreme reluctance, all of a sudden, it has simply taken off. The designers can't have enough and the industrialists can't have enough. In any production environment, it is a key issue. And now we are also proceeding, hopefully with CSIR help and with Indian Institute of Science help, we would be proceeding for not product design only, but process design, industrial engineering designs, and so on and so forth. The second part of this is the innovation cluster initiatives. This primarily has been, the lead has been taken by the India Innovation National Council, National Innovation Council. We are very happy to contribute to it. What they did was to make everybody talk for the first time. And then the success rate was very encouraging. A third one is catch them young. Get idea incubation supported. Get idea incubation supported. So we have launched our incubator scheme, and the colleges have taken well to it, or shall I say the students have taken well to it. Very small amounts, $20,000, $30,000. But all of a sudden, the ideas are now taking shape before their own eyes. The fourth is the intellectual property right regime. This is a very difficult challenge for a small industry. So we have provided for the intellectual property right facilitation centers across the country. We have opened for a large country like ours, it's a very small number. We have opened only 24 of them. But we are happy to note that at least 103 applications for patents have been filed and 213 applications for trademark has been filed. As I said, it's a start. I can see Chairman looking at his watch. I'll take 2.5 minutes more. 1 minute more. Okay. There are three parts that we should be now looking for the future action plan. The future action plan must have government as a facilitator. And any future action plan, whilst we have put all this in place, if we do not facilitate, tomorrow the commercialization of the same shall not take place. As a facilitator, therefore, the most concrete intervention that we are looking at is providing cloud computing for our micro, small and medium enterprises. Once we provide cloud computing, whether it is services, infrastructure or platform, our role is to prepare a standardized SLA, because the big one is not going to sign a SLA with the small fellow. He is prepared to sign it with a $2 billion enterprise, not with somebody who is in 100,000 range. So enable business processes with cloud computing and subsequently go sectorally. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and you were just on time. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me see what I picked up. I picked up several facets of a national innovation ecosystem. I'm just going to read them out and just request you to listen, and then I'd like a comment from each of you about whether there's something which is forming as a pattern within which what I'm saying, or a key, or some keys in it. We need to create funding mechanisms to prime the pump and to have skilled investors. And this is something the government should have a hand in and induce to happen. The education system, which enables people to understand what innovation is, improves their own, opens their own minds for them to be creative. Education system. Next is several things which are to do with connections. And Mr. Santa Lamaza, particularly from your side, as you mentioned about collaboration and the triple helix between different institutions, knowledge, business, public sector collaboration. talked about networks which are necessary. Small can be okay, provided they function in a network. And Amrinder, your points, I think, come to that. You enable small to take advantage of, like cloud computing, and access things which they cannot individually own. Government's role in creating platforms for collaboration, for connections in networks. Then we had a very interesting question about IPR. And here's where we say, well, IPR is in a way making knowledge privately owned, whereas, yes, knowledge should be shared and used and combined, and the more freely that is done, perhaps there'll be more innovation. So it seems to me that at least this one I'm throwing in as a question, that the architecture of the IPR regime today, and especially the way it's playing out, even in the ICT or particularly in the ICT industries, is that now going to be a limitation on further innovation rather than a stimulation for further innovation, especially as we say that it's about combinations, it's about knowledge being accessed by others and used, while there is, of course, some benefit to be provided to those who have invested in real innovation. Then, coming to other very big points, and yourself, Ramesh, challenges. But before that, since I'm on the ICT point, I do want to recognize what Mr. Pepper put very well about ICT is a great component of a national innovation ecosystem. And we are not as good as we need to be, we're not too bad, but we have a great opportunity there in our country, and we should be, at least India, doing much more in that regard. And I'm glad to say that our chairman, Sam Petroda, is a ICT jock, if I can say. So he keeps pushing us to get really advanced compared to the world even in his ambitions. So yes, we have to get much further in that regard. And with that, coming to you, Ramesh, the 2 points that you made, which I think wrap up a few things here. One is, grand challenges. And since we said ICT, I was reminded of a cartoon, Mr. Lakshman, who's our best cartoonist in the country, and for the last 50 years or more, 60 years, has been diligently every day putting on a cartoon, commenting from a Aam Aadmi, a common person's perspective on what's happening in the country. And this 10 years ago, he had a cartoon showing a minister arriving in some constituency and about 10, 20 people surrounding him, looking quite angry. And the minister saying, when I've given you cell phones, why do you keep asking for drinking water? And so, yes, how do we now connect what various components in the ecosystem can enable us to do to the real needs of people, very basically amongst whom is drinking water. I'm sure that little girl could survive, and girls like her have survived without cell phones, but no one has survived without good drinking water for too long in their lives. So we have some real needs to address, and those could be the grand challenges